I can share awkward introvert stories to the end of time. When you find two overlapping attributes that are really not connected, like they feel like on the surface, polarities, and there's some kind of dichotomy that exists between these two. If we find that overlap, it's our own very unique, special space. And we get into a room and we do these full day strategy sessions, and the words in which they come up with to describe their brand are pretty generic. They'll say things like innovative, thoughtful, caring, organic. There was a company that was a very forward-thinking beauty brand. It was using adaptogenics and Eastern ingredients with Western science. And I said to them, is our positioning sexy science?
Can you speak a little bit more to the fear that comes up in people when you are working with clients who are just like, no, Chris, I'm going to lose business if I go only an inch wide. I'm going to lose business.
What evidence do you have for this to be true?
Ooh, we were legitimately just talking about this earlier today. Adults' fears of being a beginner again. And in this digital space, being a beginner in front of people.
I guess this is a thing about common sense. It's not so common. The more I know what I don't know. And what I find is that when you think you've reached the top of the mountain, you just found that you're at the base of the next mountain. I'd like to say this though, maybe there's no end, period.
All right. So, Chris, we're super excited to have you on here today. It feels like just yesterday or maybe 10 years ago that we had first met at Neil's event Forward in July earlier this year. But we're really excited to get into all the things today. And first question I have, which is what really stood out to me the most when you were hosting your keynote in Vegas earlier this summer, you took us through a really intense workshop. It really opened up a lot. No, it's good. We're all about intense. We don't apologize. We rip off the Band-Aids here at Not Nice Clever. So. Yeah. Candace goes deep. So one thing that I loved about your workshop, because the thing we've noticed about branding is that it can be so fuzzy and nebulous, but you really broke it down into some tangible ways. And you did that by talking about juxtapositions and about developing your two-word brand. And one of the examples that stood out to me the most was being a recovering people pleaser and how you could incorporate that into your branding. And of course, you being a loud introvert, there's another juxtaposition. So it really stood out to me. And I just want to know where did the genesis of that approach come from in your work?
Many years ago, I used to do corporate work and I used to do brand strategy for corporations. And so naturally what happens is when you gather together a room of executives, C-level, C-suite executives, they're a little bit out of touch with what they're doing, with the marketing, with the voice. And it's not that they're bad people. It's just they have a lot of other things to worry about. So then somewhere along the way, they find my gosh, what we have is super watered down. It's very generic. And we get into a room and we do these full day strategy sessions. And the words in which they come up with to describe their brand are pretty generic. They'll say things like innovative, thoughtful, caring, organic, whatever it is they want to say. And what we have to do is we have to push past all that. So I figured asking them to come up with words that are braver, bolder, a little bit off the beaten path was futile. They're just going to use more words that they already know because we only want to see ourselves in a very positive light. So it was kind of a trick. I say what would our critics say about us right now? And then it's kind of interesting. When we kind of walk around in this world, we're tuned to the positive, but as soon as you give somebody a negative opportunity, they'll pile it on. They're like, well, they think this about us. And so then what we do is we get to a place of truth. And well, Chris, this feels terrible. Thanks for ruining our brand and our day today. I'm like, well, hold on, everybody. Before we jump off the bridge, we're not done yet. Let me pull you back here. Now, how can this thing be a positive attribute? Because I find when you find two overlapping attributes that are really not connected, like they feel like on the surface, polarities, and there's some kind of dichotomy that exists between these two. If we find that overlap, it's our own very unique, special space. And we can find it's super magical. There was a company that was a very forward-thinking beauty brand, digestible cosmetics. It was using adaptogenics and Eastern ingredients with Western science. And so eventually we got to this place and I said to them, is our positioning sexy science? And they're like, oh my gosh, maybe that's what it is. So it can't be for legal reasons, they can't say does X, Y, and Z, because to get the FDA or whoever to approve that, you have to run so many tests. It's a very expensive thing, but they believe it's based in science. But there's something that's beautiful about it, that's Eastern metaphysics and something much more natural to like ancient wisdom. So sexy science became a thing that's like, okay, I think we can own this category. So when we go too far towards beauty and fluff and woo, we have to pull it back. And when we try to be like a big pharma company, we know we can't claim that. So this is a little space we can claim and we can defend this. And this is pretty awesome. That's where it began.
I love that. We love a good alliteration here at Not Nice Clever. And this is something that I think a lot of people, we see it, right, Candace? People are like, no, we have to go broad and speak to everybody so we don't limit ourselves and lose out on business. But it's so counterintuitive to go deep and go narrow. But that's where you really see the magic happen.
Yes. There's an expression in positioning. It says something like, don't go a mile wide and an inch deep. Go an inch wide and a mile deep. That's where the good stuff is. That's where you find pay dirt.
Yep. Agreed.
Can you speak a little bit more to the fear that comes up in people when you are working with clients who are just like, no, Chris, I'm going to lose business if I go only an inch wide. I'm going to lose business. It's actually going to hurt me. And what if people won't want to work with me, hire me, all of the things because they think I can't help them because I only speak to this, this small segment. Like, what does that conversation sound like when you're talking to a client? Because it's something that Kat and I experience all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing. We want to have customers who love us, right? So for them to love us, I say, well, we should love them first. And a friend of mine, his name's Eamon, and he's the former CEO of AppSumo. He said something like this: to try to build a website that speaks to all people is like writing a love letter and saying and starting it off with "to whom it may concern."
Oh.
Okay, just think about that. Let that process a little bit. So what you're saying is, I love you, clients, but to whom it may concern is like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what your wants and needs are.
Insulting, personally.
A little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, excuse me?
Yeah.
Are you talking to me? No, I don't think so.
Let me just burn this letter right here.
So what we knew is, if we understand it in that context, well, what are we doing here? And I know it's counterintuitive, yet I guess this is a thing about common sense. It's not so common. In that they think, if I go wide, if I try to reach as many customers as possible, I'll have the most number of opportunities. And then what we can say is, what evidence do you have for this to be true? Let's look at it. Let's look at competitors. Let's look at companies and brands you admire, not where they are today, but how they became who they are today. And that's a mistake a lot of people do. They copy someone's end in terms of their journey versus where they began. But you're at the beginning of your journey and you're trying to like go where they are. So if they've got a PhD, they're a Nobel laureate, they're a world-renowned speaker, they've written 10 best-selling books, you're like, that's the path to success, Chris. I'll just do that. I'm like, oh, really? Or maybe you just got to go to school first. Maybe you got to get your doctorate degree. Maybe you got to start putting thoughts together. Why don't we retrace their steps and start where it makes sense for us versus like going to the end? Makes no sense whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. We were legitimately just talking about this earlier today. People's adult fears of being a beginner again. And in this digital space, being a beginner in front of people, in front of others, and opening themselves up and being vulnerable in that way. We see that all the time. But you're never going to get to the end journey or enjoy the destination if you don't start by being a beginner first. That's where everybody starts. That's where you started. That's where we started. Nobody's exempt from being a beginner.
I'd like to say this though, maybe there's no end, period. I think that's a finite mindset. That's a fixed mindset. So we enjoy the process. We say life is a continuum of growing, of learning and adapting and changing. That I think the people I find that are intelligent, they almost always say the same thing, which is the more I know what I don't know. And it's only ignorant people are like, I know everything there is to know about X, Y, or Z. And it's kind of weird, right? Again, it's counterintuitive. We think, well, you've reached the terminus of whatever it is that you're learning about. Well, really? Is that the end or is there more to it? And what I find is that when you think you've reached the top of the mountain, you just found that you're at the base of the next mountain. So keep climbing, keep loving the adventure, and you're going to grow and stay young all your life.
I love it.
So I may have done a little bit of light internet stalking, also known as research, prior to this podcast.
We do our homework here.
We did our homework. And so I was watching some of your YouTube videos, watching some of your interviews with other people, and you were talking about being an introvert. Specifically, there was a story about you getting invited to a dinner in LA, and you were going to go by yourself, and you were feeling a little bit unsure. You're like, I don't want to be in this space with all these people, right? Like, introvert is coming up, and it didn't sound good to you, but you heard that Alex Hormozi was going to be there, and he's someone that you wanted to have on your podcast. So that kind of convinced you, swayed you to go. Mm-hmm. And that's interesting because Kat and I experience that often. We get invited places. We're like, oof, I don't know if I can handle it. I didn't manage my energy the day before. Like, is this something I can do? But in addition to that, I find that something that really helps me push through is if I have a goal. If there's some goal that I know I can accomplish while I am there, or there's a conversation I can have, I feel like I'm in a different mode all of a sudden. And it's not about, I'm not worried about the weird, awkward conversations that I might have to have because I know I'm working towards a specific thing. Can you just like talk to us a little bit about that story for people who haven't heard that story and like what actually ended up happening? Because I think that you had one certain goal and something else came of it.
Yeah, all kinds of crazy things happen. And how long is your podcast? Because I can share awkward introvert stories to the end of time.
Our audience would love it.
They would feel so seen and so heard if that's all we talked about.
So let me tell you this story, and then I can tell you other weirder stories and how one adapts to this extroverted world, it seems. And just for a point of clarity, my friend Eric said, "Hey, Chris, I want you to speak at my mastermind." I'm like, "How much you can pay me?" He goes, "I got no budget." I'm like, I think I'm busy that day. I'm pretty sure my schedule's all booked up. He goes, "Here's the deal. I can't pay anybody. I don't pay anybody. But I heard you want to have Hormozi, and he's going to be there at dinner and the speaker's dinner." I'm like, dang it. Oh, he's throwing that hook in front of me. I'm like,
he got you.
Fudge. Okay. I can get, well, first of all, I live in LA, right? So to drive from the West Side to Beverly Hills, that's an adventure in itself.
Yeah.
It's a trek.
It is.
People don't know. Traffic is real. It's real. Okay.
It's an extreme sport in LA.
It is. And I'm like, dang it. And I got to park and I got to figure this thing out. And I got to drive back again and do this thing twice, whatever. So I think about it. I'm like, all right, man, I'm in. I mean, what you'll do to get somebody on your podcast is just ridiculous, right?
Yeah, exactly. We know.
We've got stories.
Okay. So I'm like, okay, I'll go to this dinner. So I go, and of course, I know nobody. I don't know anybody there. I know Eric's as soon as I see him. I'm like, freaking safety blanket. Hey, bro, what are you doing? Let me just stay by your side the whole time.
So true.
Like, damn, dude, don't leave me, bro. I know you're the host, and I know you got a lot of people you got to talk to. And so I see some other faces. I'm like, wait, I think I kind of recognize some people. Anyways, we're in this swanky Beverly Hills restaurant. We're sitting there. He's like, Chris, you're sitting here. I'm like, great. And then next to me is Hormozi. Yeah. And so there's like strategic seating here. I'm sorted in the middle to the left. It's a pretty long table. So at the edges of the table, you don't know who they are. It's like, you can't talk to them. It's too far. It's too loud. I think there are like 12, 14 people here. And I just introduced myself to Hormozi, talk a little bit and like, hey, I'd love to have you on the podcast. Maybe when it works out for you, whatever. I don't want to, that's enough for me. Just state your intention. We'll put that story aside. So I'm like, okay, whatever. But the cool part is like when you open yourself to uncomfortable new experiences that are outside the box, outside your comfort zone, sometimes cool things happen. Mm-hmm. And there's a gentleman, he's sitting in the left corner of the table in the darkness, and he's got really long curly hair. It looks like Jesus. And he speaks with like a very low, soft tone in this Australian accent. It's like, he's like, hey, Chris, I'm Sam. I'm like, Sam, I know who you are. One of my buddies like worships you. So it's like, I know who you are. And we start talking a little bit. And he introduces this idea to me about starting a mastermind, something I've been thinking about a lot. But since I've never been a part of one, don't intend on joining one, mm-hmm. I need somebody to tell me what's up. How's this structured? I don't need a step-by-step plan. I just need what's the big idea. So that night, within 25 minutes or so, he convinces myself and through scattershot 2 other people next to me to start masterminds. It's pretty wild. And then I'm super excited. I'm like in the car driving home. I'm calling my chief operating officer, Ben Burns. And I'm like, Ben, okay, you know this thing I've been talking about? I figured out how to do it.
It's happening.
It's happening. And he's like, great, Chris. So true to Ben's character, by the next morning, he's already got a document with everything we talked about, how we're going to do this. And so those are the kind of rewards you can get when you step into that like area of darkness and unknown territory. Cool things can happen, not always.
Are there any practices, rituals, anything that you do to kind of hype yourself up before a situation like
There we
that?
go.
Show up
Now I
routines.
know you know. You
Yeah.
know.
Wait,
I know you know. You're not pretending.
No. We each have our show up routine.
Yes.
We'll share
Okay.
ours after you
Okay.
share yours.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Let's switch it up. Let's switch it to something else. Like there's a party or an event, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm a speaker, and so sometimes as a speaker, you get invited to these kind of pre-event parties. I'm like, oh, good. And I'm a
Small
horrible
talk.
person. Yeah, no kidding. I'm a horrible person in that I'm so in my own head. I'm worried about what I'm going to say that I don't even look up who's going to be speaking. Not walking there completely clueless, right? So that's the part of the problem. So here's what I do. What I do is I kind of just say to myself, what's the first viable step in order to get there? Well, I got to get out of the bed in the hotel room. I mean, let's start there.
Yeah.
Low ambition. Turn on the freaking TV, okay? Stop telling yourself this is where you need to be because nothing's happening here. I promise you, nothing good is happening here. So I'm like, okay, let me shave or shower or put on some clothes. I'm like, okay, well, now what? Now I'm clean. I smell good. I look good, I think. The socks match the shirt. I'm like, okay, what's the next? Well, I feel a little silly sitting here. Maybe I should go down to the lobby. I go down to the lobby. I'm like, now that I'm here, do you know where this bar or hotel is where this event is happening? Like, yeah, just go there. I'm like, all right. And here's how bad I am. I'm going to walk it. I need to figure this out before I get there. Uber's too quick, right? So I walk there. I'm like, okay, this looks like the place, I think. I walk in there, I look around. It's like, I hear noise, but I don't see anybody. And so it's just this ritual of doing the next step. And you start with the first step. And recently I came across this video from an old time YouTube influencer. His name is Mike Chang. And he used to be like this 6-pack ab shortcuts guy, a little cheesy. But now he's way more spiritual. He's married, he has a kid, and he says something very different. His whole energy and aura is different. And here's what he said, and I'll bring this home in a second. He said, the best exercise is just to do 1 rep. I know what everybody tells you. You got to do circuit training. You got to do HIIT training. You got to do all these weird things. You got to just do 1 rep. And it's about just understanding your energy. So let's just say you're going to do an arm curl. So just get yourself into the gym, do 1 arm curl, and put it down and walk away from it. And ask yourself, how's my energy? How am I feeling right now? Just really check in with yourself. And he goes, if that's it for you, that's it for you. Go back to doing what you're doing. But if that felt good, just do 1 more rep. Oh, okay. Let me just do 1 more rep. And then you do 2 reps. And you're like, how's that feeling? How's your energy? Is it better? Is it worse? And then before you know it, you might actually do a 15, 20-minute workout that leads to an hour-long workout. And that's the way you're supposed to do it. He goes, don't go into it saying, I'm going to do 1 rep and then I need to do 30 minutes. Because that's just too much and most people are going to turn away. And I love that approach. And there's a lot of people that I read about who are super fit. And they have the same struggles as you or I. It's just like, I hate this, but I got to do it. I'm just going to show up and sit in the lot for a while and see what happens. And so that's the idea. So when you're dreading something, just ask yourself, what's the first viable step? Because step 10 can't happen if step 9 doesn't happen versus 8, 7. So just start with the first step. And then just check in with yourself. How do I feel right now?
I love it.
I love that advice. It's funny you mentioned like you're so in your head and worrying about what you're going to say and then not realizing that so many other people are like that too. And so part of my show up routine, it's a little different than yours. It's still very like step by step. Like I tried to zoom in and get like out of my head and into my body. So I'll go and I'll take a walk. I'll play some music. Like music completely changes the frequency of my entire body. And then I'll shower. Like I absolutely have to shower. Even if I showered that morning, I'll shower right before an event. I'll shower right before training. It just like, that's like my meditation space. And I have to do that. And then I've got my skincare and everything. And I'm like, I'm set to go. But I feel like everybody has, and I didn't even know it was called a show up routine until one of our friends she's insanely smart. She's a PhD in performance science and knows humans and how to get humans to move. And I was explaining to her, I was like, I have to hop off this call because we're going live in a little bit and I have to shower first. She's like, oh, is that your show up routine? And I was like, oh, so it's a thing. It's not just me being weird and wanting to be in the shower before I hop on here.
There are similar parallels. I'm sorry. There's similar parallels to creative things and sports and things like that.
Yes.
But I'll park that.
Definitely.
Candace, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I was going to say that I have to know what I'm going to wear. That can't be a barrier. I can't in that moment right before I'm about to go on stage, right before I'm about to lead a workshop, whatever, or go to a dinner with people who I admire. If I have to think about what I'm going to wear, it's going to make my energy frantic and I will not be able to calm down. So that has to be something I plan well ahead of time. And I have to feel good about everything. Nothing can be itchy. Nothing can be tight. Nothing can be like, it has to feel literally good on my body or I will be distracted. And so that's something that I definitely spend time thinking about. And then probably prior to the event, I'm only with my safety blanket people. I'm only with people who yes, totally. Right. Like my best friends, I'm with Kat, I'm with people who I'm not, there's no filter with them. Those are the only people that I can spend time with before. And then what I haven't been good at, but I want to be better at is after I do something like that, that's pushing me out of my comfort zone, is to give myself some downtime. Like I need to process it after the fact, right? After the fact, I need to sit down and have some alone time. And I wasn't and haven't been good about doing that, but that's something I'm working on now.
Candace, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you have some go-to outfits that you're like, these things are the bomb? It always works every time.
I know what she's going to say. Yeah.
2 or 3 outfits.
Okay. So I love jeans and a blazer. A blazer can immediately make you feel like you are put together. So for me, jeans, blazer, heels combination is kind of a go-to standard. And these are not necessarily outfits, but I do the power pony. So you might not be able to do this, Chris, but I do the high ponytail.
Yeah, high pony energy.
The high pony.
I can't do that at all. Let's be clear about that.
But a high ponytail, I feel like that is me. I am on. I can do anything with the power pony. And then big hoop energy. I got to bring my hoop earrings. I'm not wearing them right now because of these, but normally wearing hoop earrings makes me feel better. So those are just like a couple things, but definitely nothing itchy. That is a no-go for me.
So we all have what our inner demons, and we know how to conquer them. So when we deviate from that, I think it puts us like, it dysregulates us like, wow, I'm just not feeling good. And then it's just like a domino chain reaction of things that are going to happen. Right.
And it seems like something so small. Like what does it make a difference? Like what you're wearing, Candace or Kat, like if you can't take a shower, like it seems so small, but it's so impactful because it sets you off on the right foot, and how you start something is so indicative of how you move through it and how you finish it. And so I think, knowing yourself and being curious about like what show up routine works for you and trying different things. Right?
Yeah.
One thing we haven't talked about on Not Nice Clever, which I think is really important, and you touched on it when you were on stage this summer, was how, like, clothing, what you wear, how you dress. Like, obviously you have a look, Chris, and it works for you. I want to know, before Chris found this, where were you? And was it weird? Was it weird when you decided to like commit to a look? Was it weird for other people?
A lot of questions in there.
What was the feedback? You know, like
you get her talking about clothing, she'll just go
all. You said
that's
I
part
could
14
dig it.
of this podcast. All right, let's go there. So I wanted to say this though. I think we all have a routine. You have your show up routine, and then you have your outfit. And I got my weird psychosis, whatever it is, right? But I think all these things that we do, hopefully, are just training wheels. And eventually we take the training wheels off and like, hey, I'm riding. And then you're riding no hands. And then you're in a race and you're in the Tour de France. And I think we have to get to that place at some point, I think. Because the minute that the water, like your plumbing is broken and you can't take a shower, you're like, nah, I just can't do this. I just can't do it. And
that's a good call out.
Right. And your jeans are like, have a stain. I'm like, fudge, I can't wear the jeans now. Now what I'm going to do? And there's a little story here. Do you guys know who Michael Bay is?
Yes.
The maestro of explosions and action films.
Yeah.
Famous, like world famous director.
Blue and yellow filters and that. It's all his angles.
Teal and oranges, believe. Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
Yes. And the moving camera. Okay. Transformers, Pearl Harbor, Armageddon, go on down the line. Okay. Well, Michael Bay was invited to speak at some kind of conference at, I think, CES show for like Samsung. It's a huge stage. It's very corporate. They introduce him. He steps on stage, and normally a fairly loud, brash, confident guy goes on stage. He's pretty skinny. He starts talking, and something is wrong with his slides with the notes. Something is off. And this is a guy who's, commanded multi-billion-dollar budget films franchises. Okay. He's not some rookie. He gets on stage and he's like, hey, this is not work. Hey, yeah. And he forgets how to speak English. And he has a complete meltdown on stage and just storms off like a child. I'm like, oh my God. Come on, Michael. Who cares? If you're in your underwear and your hair's all messy and the slides don't work, just tell a story about what it's like to work with Shia LaBeouf, or give us something and then get off stage. It's fine. So that's what happens when we have too many props to hold us up, that we can then get totally effed up. So I just want to warn everybody, yes, in the beginning, you have your routine, and slowly wean yourself off the routine and just realize one thing. If you're weird, if you're awkward, and no one wants to talk to you, just accept that that's you, and that's totally fine.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you a really awkward, weird story. So I go to that speaker's party. I step in, and aside from meeting the host, again, it's like I'm lost in the sea of people. I'm in Canada. I'm like, damn, I'm not used to the temperature, but I don't know anybody here. And a buddy of mine is supposed to meet me there, another speaker, and I don't see him anywhere. So now I'm really lost. And I'm thinking to myself the whole time, time to leave, let's go. And there's groups of people. You know how like there's circles that are formed? How do you break into that? Everybody seems so happy talking to each other.
It's like middle school dance all over again. And you're just like...
And their shoulders are like impenetrable.
You're like, where do I sit?
Yeah, like exactly. Okay. The nightmare of every awkward, shy, introverted person.
Yes.
I'm like, I need to leave. What do I do? So I just buy myself some time. Let me get a drink. For me, a drink, it's like seltzer water, right? I'm like, okay, I'm just going to hold this. And now I have something for my hands to do. And I'm drinking slowly. I'm almost sometimes even pretending I'm drinking, because if I drink it all, now I got nothing to do again, and I got to go back. Okay, it's super weird. And I'm thinking, my God, what am I to do here? So I just imagine myself in that moment as a tree. I'm going to put my roots down on this ground right here. And I'm just going to be here just like how trees are. They don't care what you're doing. And then position myself strategically between the high traffic zone, between the bar and the bathroom. Because that's the only time people break out from their groups. And I'm looking for another lost soul, because it's easier to befriend another dork than it is to like, hey, cool person.
It is. And then you start
king and queen.
Then you start a podcast together.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I just put my foot there, and I just sat there for a while. I'm like, until they turn on the lights and tell us to go home, I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to push past that level of discomfort. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. My heart's racing. I got a cold sweat going on in the back, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sit here. And after a while, it's like, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
I stopped pretending like, oh yeah, I'm cool, right? I know I'm totally weird. I'm just going to be like a tree stump. I'm just going to sit here. And you know, the funny thing is, it feels like a long time, but it's probably like only 5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Somebody taps me on the shoulder. I turn around, I'm like, thank God. Who are you? Who are you, friend? I don't care who you are. You could be a guy giving me a ticket. I don't really care. I turn around like, hey. And they're like, hey, you're a speaker. I'm like, yes, I am. Tell me about you. And then the conversation happens. The really weird thing is, as soon as one person invites you to the conversation, then 3 other people are like, hey, Chris. I'm like, oh, hello. Yeah. And there it is. And this is, I'm sorry to say, not an isolated incident. I do this all the time. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be weird by myself. Who cares? I'm just going to get over it.
Yep.
All right. You want to talk about style?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Because here's
Let's
why.
start with one question.
I think when you're an adult and you are finding your style and you're trying something new and everyone's watching you and they're like, oh, who does he think he is? He thinks he's like so cool now. He thinks he got swag now. Like that kind of stuff is definitely going to happen. How did that look in your life, and why did you decide that you were going to change your style?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to take you to John Steinbeck Middle School.
Oh, wow. Bringing back the classics.
We're going back.
I believe this is like the late 80s or something like this. It's got to be the late 80s. I'm an 80s kid, so I'm there. I'm like, you know what? I've just worn the clothes my mom tells me to wear for a long time. Zero style, right? And then I have an older brother who's pretty stylish. He's 4 years older than me. I'm like, okay, I need to eventually go from the moth or the caterpillar to the butterfly, I think. So right before Christmas holiday, I'm like, I'm ready to rock my new outfit. I'm gonna get my new haircut. I'm ready to go. I got a couple of pieces. I could do this more than one day. Okay.
All right.
So literally the day before holiday, because I'm like, I'm just gonna drop it on people and see what happens. I go and like people are looking at me like, who this? I'm like, I don't know. You guys all right with this?
I'm figuring it out.
I'm just working through this, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get some positive attention. Like, this sure beats getting beaten up. This is all right. So I go into the holiday and thinking I have enough courage to do this again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, you know, the cool people are like, hey, you want to sit with us? I'm like, yeah,
sure
I want to sit with you. Right? Cool. Yeah, this is cool. So, you know, and I think in adult life, it's not that different than junior high all over again, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really escape it. So I think at some point when I make some money and I'm not focused on, you know, finishing homework in college, I'm like, I have some money now. Well, now I can buy my own clothes. I can start to figure this thing out. So I think, you know, I have a design sensibility and it's just an evolution. So you hit a certain chapter in your life. You're like, what's the next chapter? So here I am. I'm rocking probably G-Star. I like a couple different things. You know, it's fine. You know, I kind of like this slim fitting military inspired look, you know, and layered useless accessories that I don't know. There's too many pockets for stuff. Like, and I don't use any of them, but they're kind of cool. It's like this paramilitary tactical stuff. But, you know, here's where I joined the dark side. So my wife has been encouraging me to buy stuff. Now, okay, we grew up in two totally very different places. She grew up in Taiwan, where everybody looks like her, and she's part of the dominant culture.
Mm-hmm.
They're upper class. Her dad is a commercial pilot, so they have money. They can shop and go on vacations. We're refugees living in America. We look nothing like anybody. I'm just picked on most of my life, feeling very different. So we're in a very different place. So when we're in college, and she's like, "Please don't tell this story," I'm like, "Babe, I got to tell the story." I'm living off like sandwiches and, you know, trying to like use coupons to buy whatever I need to live. She's like, I wonder what they're doing at Barney's. I got to go buy some couture. I'm like, oh my God. We're just friends, but I'm just grossed out by this. Like, God dang you rich bastards. I'm just trying to scrape by, you know, my beater, like hand me down car. And there you guys are driving your Beamers and whatever. It's like, one day I'm going to show you one day. Right. So she's been encouraging me all throughout our marriage, like, hey, just go for it. You work so hard. You earned it. I'm like, no, I'm not going to buy into this clothing hype game, luxury goods. I'm not going to get manipulated by that. But here's the thing. Once you go, there's no turning back. It's just a warning, right? There's a public service announcement for everybody. Once you get into luxury goods, it's like, oh, this is what the good life is like. Okay. And the next thing you know, you're like tracking down pieces that are vintage or out of season. And that's what happened to me. So what you saw on stage is the latest evolution of me exploring brands and things that I thought were out of reach in terms of price point, this discomfort I had. But I'm going to do this. But there's an intention behind this, which is if I want to start a clothing company, which I do, I need to signal to the market. These are things that I care about and maybe I can help. So if I'm looking like a scrub up on stage, no one is going to say like, well, you can't trust that guy. Look at him. What a mess. Right? You don't want to get personal trainers out of shape. It doesn't make sense. So you're not going to take personal branding advice from someone who's like got no personal brand, got no swag. The drip game is off. You're not. So I have to work on that. Have to.
I love
Get
it.
to. Yeah.
Yes. In air quotes, have to. Yeah.
I also feel like if you have good style, it's a conversation starter, which is great for an introvert. Someone can come talk to me about 100%. What I'm wearing. Someone go talk to you about your glasses. Someone talk to you about the hat that you're wearing. And that is an opportunity to like say, I'm open to this without having to put yourself in a weird situation.
Yeah. I remember when I first started working with Ryan and I went to New York to get our headshots done at the office in Soho. And at the time, the company was very small. We hadn't expanded to all the markets that we're in now. And all of the headshots on the website were real estate agents or the full-time staff. And they were all, it's New York, very New York. I'm from San Francisco. I'm a West Coast girl, like through and through. But all of them were wearing suits and ties and button-ups and blazers. Not like the cool, sexy neon blazers that you wear, Candace, but like the typical blazers you think of. And I was like,
JCPenney headshot blazer.
Yes. Yeah. The side angle like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like that was me. Like I feel like the best clothing that I love is the clothing that makes me feel the most like me. And you know, Nikki, she's one of our amazing photographers at Sirhan. She was photographing me and she's like, so what are you going to wear? Because I had like a top and like my black jeans and my black heels, but I hadn't decided on my jacket. And I was like, well, Nikki, like I have my black leather jacket and I kind of want to wear that, but I don't think it really fits the vibe. She's like, fuck it. Like put it on, wear it. And now to this day, I think I'm still the only person with a headshot on that website that has a leather jacket, but leather jackets and leather jacket energy and like the anti-authority, like counterculture vibe, the rebellious vibe of it is just so like me. And I was so close to not wearing the leather jacket for that moment, but I'm so glad that I did. And now it still feels like me. So until it doesn't feel like me, I'm going to continue wearing it like wherever I can.
I'm ready for you to get their face tat. Let's go. You know, you got to go all the way. If you're going to wear the leather jacket, let's go.
Kat has a lot of tattoos.
I do.
I didn't know. I don't know if our listeners know that.
Yeah, my whole back is tatted. I have a memorial for my mother and my aunt. They're Japanese American, so I have their names in hiragana. And then I have a star for my grandfather, a phoenix for my transformation that I've undergone, and then a scapula tattoo for when I was in nursing school. No,
so face tat is next.
Yeah.
Or a neck tattoo. Let's go.
It was hard enough for my mom.
Chicken.
Oh my goodness. We'll see. My goodness. Yeah.
Get a stamp tramp right here somewhere where we can see it. Let's go.
We'll see. If I do it, it has to be a full body yes. If it's not a full body yes, I'm not going to do it. So, but challenge heard. We'll see if I accept
what I said?
it.
Just one small step.
One small step of face tat.
One small step. You know, you don't have to do the full day. Just like one like teardrop. You know, just some butterfly. No, I'm just kidding.
I think I'd break my mother's heart if I did that. We'll see. Oh man. All right.
Chris, earlier, go ahead, Kat. Do you have something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say earlier you mentioned that building a brand has a lot of correlations to sports and athletics. I'm always trying to make that correlation, but I know nothing about sports. But
no,
I see that. And actually, the funny thing is my favorite clients to work with are athletes because I think it's because they have an amount of discipline. They're willing to put in the work. But anyways, I would love for you to share with our audience, like how you see the correlation between them and take that wherever makes sense for you.
Okay. Let's try this. I'm going to freestyle. When I was talking about sports, baseball players are super superstitious. They're the most superstitious people.
Yes, they are.
They wear like underwear they never wash their underwear or something.
Never
like that,
wash
right?
the same.
Right. They have to get dressed
gloves,
in the same
order.
Sock. Yeah,
exactly. Touch this, do that, drink this, and you're like, this is crazy. But it actually turns out not to be crazy at all because every one of us has a ritual to prepare ourselves, and we get into this state where people would call our flow state. So for them, that's their version of meditating, clearing their mind, quieting the demons, focusing on the goal, the outcome, projecting their mind into the future, the positive future tense. That's what they want. And so they're all going through that. And so that's the sports part. Now, when it comes to branding in sports, this I've not talked about before, so let's see where this goes, okay?
All right.
You guys, I will try. I'm thinking on my feet here. I'm not a sports guy. I'm not a team sports guy. And so I always find it crazy that Americans and Europeans are crazy about their team. When they don't play and they have no stake in this game whatsoever, they show up. Some of them paint their face. Some of them don't even wear shirts and they're body painted. They're screaming and yelling. They're buying box seats and they drag all kinds of other people into this crazy affair. What is this? So what sports teams have done is they've been able to tell a story. They say it's us versus everyone else. So here's who we are. And it's usually just identified by region. Like, are you from San Francisco? Are you from New York? Are you an LA person? And so that just happens to be your team. You inherit the team based on where you live. Now, depending on where you grow up, that might carry on with you. So you no longer live there. it's there. And then what they do is they have songs. They sing their songs. They have their colors. They have their war paint. They have their mascots. And I think if we go back to like, where did branding come from? Where did brand come? It didn't come from farmers and ranchers.
Mm-mm.
It didn't come from European candle makers. I think it comes from royalty. Like if you're a lord or lady of a land and you say, okay, they're conquerors and we're going to protect you. These are our colors. This is the family crest.
Right. The coat of arms, the suit of arms.
The coat of arms, exactly. And so when you go on the field to literally do battle, we know it's us versus them, literally from our armor. And they're like, raise the banners.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. We are going to go to war. And whoever wins, well, their brand wins. So if you kind of take it into the modern context now, how do we deal with this brand? Well, first of all, who are we for? Who are we against, more importantly?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that people are sometimes reluctant to say. We stand for this, but we don't know what you stand against. Stand against something first. By virtue, then we know what you stand for. It's kind of like that. So it's also the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So it's not, okay, now we give them something. Well, we have to have a symbol to identify it's us. And there's a secret language. We're very kind of tribal in our identity and trying to understand and belong to something, some kind of community, so we don't feel so alone. So this could be the tribe of weird introverts who do podcasts.
Are
we starting
with face tattoos? I don't know.
We'll have Candace come up with a logo design, and then we'll go to a tattoo shop in LA, and then we'll have to explain to our significant others what we did.
We won't actually go through with it, but yes.
But we'll document it, and
They have those ones that apparently only last for like a year, and then they fade away. So maybe, hey.
Yes. A guest on my podcast, Patrick Hanlon, wrote a book about like tribal brands and understanding the rituals. And rituals make us know like who we are, like the ceremony. Like when you think about marriage, I do and I don't, and till death do us part, and the breaking the glass and all this kind of, it's all ceremony to kind of bring us into the story, the narrative. And so I find that brands that have a cult-like following do certain things. They invent a language. This is really important. They make you say different words. Okay.
Yep.
So if we look at brands that you love, okay, let's just say like Nike or Adidas, because they're two different brands here at war with each other, right? They don't just call it like rubber, they call it Adiprene. Or Flyknit for Nike. It's like, no,
right.
It's just, it's fabric, man. Why do we gotta call it something?
It's the same material.
Yeah. It is. And everybody's got it now. I mean, I know it was innovative when they came out with it, but they want you to use this language. And so if you look at something very simple like Starbucks forces you or encourages you to use their secret language. Think about it. I'm like, I want a large, a venti or Trenta or Grant. What? And you keep going through this, right? And so we know that if we invent a language and we encourage people to use it, they're enrolling themselves into the tribe, because it clearly signals to other people, I'm part of the Starbucks tribe, and you're not, because you're not using the language. You see what I'm saying?
And everyone wants to belong.
That's right.
Yes.
And then we have our emblem. Yeah. And what they do is they print that on things. So it's like now outside of Starbucks, you can tell people you belong to that tribe. And so you have to give people a couple of things. You have to give them rituals. There are rituals. There's a secret language, and there's customs, and there's symbols to say we are this. There are colors that you adhere to. And so that starts to begin this tribe, this brand, this following that you have.
Language is so powerful. And I think it's one thing that people overlook. Like it was extremely humbling for me earlier this year. I traveled to Japan for the first time, where my mother is from and her family, and how humbled I was to be in the train station and see everything in Japanese, and everybody around me is speaking Japanese, and I don't look like anybody there. And I'm just like lost, and just, that I don't think I realized how powerful language was until I was in that situation where I wasn't the majority, and I had to figure it out. And I had to learn the 20 words or phrases that would get me by, like in my travels while I was there. But if I hadn't learned that, it would have just been me dependent on body language, which is helpful, but it's not everything.
And Kat is an amazing copywriter. Like words are her superpower. And so for her to I think that
Yeah.
language, she just considers language all the time. And so to be in a situation where it's like even more in depth,
Yeah.
exploring what those words mean to you and how it connects people, I think is really cool.
Yeah. It was
I'll
good to
add
be
to
a
that.
beginner.
There's a chapter inside Ronald Baker's book, Implementing Value Pricing. It's in the early parts of the book. And it's a quote from Werner Erhard, I believe. And the quote is, all transformation is linguistic. If you change the language, you change the culture. Super powerful stuff. So if we think about it, and I've explored this with my therapist before, and she asked me this question: what's your earliest childhood memory? And how old were you? And I tell her, and it's usually around 3 years old. She goes, I've asked a lot of people this. It's almost always around 3. And it's really when you have enough vocabulary to describe what's going on. So I'm like, so my life doesn't exist before words? And she goes, no, it exists, but it's very soft. It's kind of blurry, and it's just feelings, and they're real and they're there, but you can't access them the way that you can once you develop language. And it's so interesting to me, the concept of language, this invention that we have, that if I say a certain sequence of words in a certain tone, you have a shared experience with me. It's pretty wild. And so what happens to us is when we're experiencing something in our lives, we can describe it as torturous, empowering, inspirational, and then that locks the emotion that we feel to the experience itself. And so there is no memory without an emotion, without words. They're all interconnected. So this is super empowering to me in that, well, you chose the words that describe the experience. And if you don't like it, it also means you could choose different words. You can experience a different thing. So objectively, something happens, but if 10 people are experiencing it, there's a high probability that no 2 people experience the exact same thing. Largely depends on their state, their emotional state, their way of looking at the world, their lens, and how they record things with words. And those 3 things are super powerful if you learn how to harness it as a tool.
Yeah, I love that.
Change your words, change your life.
Exactly.
One thing that I often talk with my clients about, because I'm working with clients who are moving up, they're increasing their price points, they're making more money, they're growing their teams. And a lot of clients, and myself included, at one point would say things like, those rich people. And you kind of alluded to that earlier in your what you were talking about today, right? Ooh, those rich people. Okay, must be nice to have all that stuff. Must be nice to have all that money to make those choices. Wish that, like if I had your money, I would do X, Y, and Z, right? But always kind of excluding yourself from that group of people who has money, who has power, who has options. And like one of the first things I work with my clients on is to stop saying that, because you're then never going to attract the opportunities to have that, because you're saying those people who I feel icky about, and you wouldn't want to be the person who feels icky, right? So you're kind of repelling money by the language that you're using when you're describing a certain set of people. And so that's something I really think is super powerful in the words that you say about others and about money. Impacts the ability to create money and wealth in your life is words.
I know.
I guess attitudes too.
Word to your mother.
Yeah.
So, Chris, I know earlier you had talked about how a lot of people will look at somebody's journey when they're 10 years in or 20 years in, and they'll try to replicate what they're doing, and they'll not reverse engineer it. One thing that we've noticed, and the amazing guests we've had on, and yourself included, is wanting to understand at this point in your career, and maybe contrast it to when you first started out in your career. How do you define, again, knowing the power of words, how do you define and know when you're being successful? When you've achieved success for yourself by your own definition? What was that definition for you 20 years ago? And what is it for you today?
That's a good question. I think success for each individual is kind of like this baton that you can pick up and you throw it. And you can throw it as far as you can throw it and say, okay, now you have to move yourself towards that. But once you get there, the game is you pick it up and you throw it again. You just keep doing that. So when I'm in school, the baton is get out of school, man.
Yes.
When you're done with school, it's one day I'd like to start a company. Yeah. Okay. Once you start a company, what does that even mean? Well, it'd be great, I think, if I could have 3 full-time employees. It's just random. It's just a number. Like 1
Yeah.
feels like, yeah, whatever, anybody can do that. 2 feels like you're onto something. 3 feels like you legitimately can
There's
do
something
this.
there.
Yeah. I remember saying to my wife, like, babe, we made it. We have a company. We have 3 employees that we pay health insurance for and dental. And,
Yeah.
you know, we're like adults. We're
Very
doing
grown
this.
up.
Yeah. But then you get to that part and you're like, well, let's get to $2
Now.
million in revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's get to 4. And let's get to 6. And then you just keep doing that. Or let's work with that client, or let's win that award, and just keep doing that. I think that makes the whole thing fun. So people will say, you know, life is not the destination, it's the journey. And I really believe that, as cliche as that might be. Those that love to play the game usually win really big. Those that love the result oftentimes never get there and don't know what to do with themselves once they get there.
Ooh, we see that very, very often in our work. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like you were talking about earlier, growth versus fixed mindset. One of the other speakers and authors I really admire is Simon Sinek, and he talks about playing the infinite game. You'll never be disappointed. You'll never stop learning. You'll never stop growing. You'll still be satisfied once you've achieved those milestones, but you don't work your whole identity and meaning and purpose in life around that one success point. Like 3 employees, okay, I'm done. I'm ready to go on. Like, what's the next life look like? Right? You just you keep on going.
So in the last couple of years, I've learned something that kind of surprised me about who it is I'm trying to serve. So I'm a designer. I went to school. I'm trying to help designers. And you think, what do designers need? They need more design help? Not really. They need help with business. So I spent the last 8 or 9 years teaching creative people how to run their business, sales, marketing, even branding, strategy, that kind of stuff. And I was like, this is cool. This feels very fulfilling. And then I run to Neil's audience, his crowd of these business people.
Right.
And I'm like, I feel really weird and strange here in front of all these people. Because once again, I put myself into this position where, like, who's that odd duck in this crowd? Right. And I'm feeling it. But what's really surprised me was the appetite that this particular audience had for design, for creativity, for stepping outside the box. I think Neil's the Pied Piper, so he brings a certain group of people. So I think, you know, people in finance, accounting, real estate, like, come on, loan officers, what do they want to know about branding and design? Well, it turns out they want to know a lot. So it caused me to rethink my business model. So we're not giving up on the designers and teaching them business, but I find like it's really fun for me to go back to this place where I get to talk about design, about branding, about style and things like that to what I would consider left brainers. So we started this mastermind, this coaching group for 100 people. And the tagline that we wrote was helping left brainers think right.
I love that.
There's plays on words there, right? So it's whatever, however you want to interpret that. And it's something I'm very excited about. So quite literally what I'm doing with my friends that are men who have zero sense of style, can't, you know, basically they have the Gap look all their lives, you know, pretty generic. And I'm like, you want to go on this adventure with me? So I start sharing things about style and they start changing their style. And we'll literally go on shopping trips together. It's a strange thing for straight heterosexual men to do, but what?
Right.
No, that doesn't look good on you. You know, you need to be a little bolder. You know what I mean? And literally other straight friends are like, try this, try that. I'm like, are we in a movie? Is there a camera on right now? Because this feels a little strange.
Where's Ashton? Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And then we share these in stories on Instagram, and people are literally texting me, yo, I would have flown in for that. Bro, you got to let me know what's going on. So it's got me to think. I want to do a 2-day personal branding workshop. And I'm announcing it for the first time live here. Yes, what I think is going to happen is part of the workshop includes a shopping trip.
Yes.
Okay, so we take a before photo, you present and you speak without understanding of who your brand is or what the tone of voice and the characteristics.
Yeah.
That's the beginning. That's the baseline. Towards the end of the day, you build a mood board, something that's very aspirational that pushes you outside of your comfort zone. And the lab fee is we're all going to go maybe vintage store shopping, or we're going to go to some boutiques, and maybe a camera will follow you around and you try stuff. I'm like, no, go crazy here. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's go. And then put that together. And the next day, with this new understanding of how to appear on camera, how to speak, how to hold yourself, you're in your new outfit, your drip. And we record that and we're like, here's how you started. Here's where you're at. Continue on this adventure, friend. So I think there's going to be a couple of guys who are going to be interested in this. We'll see.
way more than a couple. That's amazing.
Way more.
Yeah.
Don't sell yourself
Yeah.
short. I think there's such a
And
need like for
There's
that
also
support,
like
the
partners
community.
who are about to sign their partner up for this.
Honestly, yeah, consider marketing to the female spouses and female partners and girlfriends. They'll just take the card. They already have access to the credit card anyway. So
Like
just
I bought you this experience for Christmas, honey. It's really for your brand and also so we could look good together at dinner.
right at date night.
Yeah. I love that. I think that you're definitely filling a gap in the market because I've not heard of anything like that and people need it. So amazing. This is one of our favorite parts. It's just rapid fire. Anything top of mind, you just answer the question the best you can.
All right,
Okay.
let me get ready for this.
All right, let's go.
Hand on the buzzer. I'm ready.
Okay. Childhood dream job. What was it?
Skateboarder.
Okay.
Love it.
When you're on the go, you're traveling for work, what's your go-to meal?
Probably something like grilled chicken with vegetables.
Okay, he's on his ab game. Takis or hot
fine.
Cheetos?
Not by the results. It was just, no.
Takis or hot Cheetos?
I don't know what any of those things are.
You don't know what Takis? You were in LA. You don't know what Takis are or hot Cheetos?
Well, we know what gift we're sending you after this episode.
Okay. Well, it's not going to help you get the abs. But okay, what is the best non-curse word, one word insult? Non-curse word.
Average.
Yes.
Just tell people you're average.
100%. Generic is another one. And you said that and you're like, don't be generic.
Yeah.
Yep. What makes you nervous?
Humans. Strangers in a crowded room. That makes me really nervous.
Heard that.
What's your current fashion brand obsession?
Probably Louis Vuitton.
Very nice.
So
you
I'm
can
at
see
the
the
airport.
credit card bill.
It's a business expense. It's a business expense.
I wish it were. It's not.
No, it's not.
No, my CPA friends say, Chris, no, it's not.
Definitely not.
Uh-oh. All right.
So I'm at the airport all the time and I have a go-to airport fit. Do you have an airport fit? Is there something you always wear when you fly? Okay, what's that?
100%. Yes.
Love it.
It's usually a dual layered drop crotch trainer pant, track pant.
Yep.
It's super comfortable shoes that you can literally kick and the shoe will fly off in case you got to go do that. And then probably 2 layers. It was something with pockets and a zipper because when you carry passports and phone and money, they tend to fall down the crack. So I need to know I could rest a lot easier if I drop them in there. And airplanes are crazy. They can be super cold or super hot. You got to be ready for both.
Right.
So something zip up hoodie, with long sleeves, that's the go-to. With my man purse. Man purse just to finish off to say I don't look like some schlub.
Louis Vuitton man purse.
Of course. Virgil Abloh Louis Vuitton
LV.
circa 2022.
There we go.
You got it.
So Kat shares your love for comic books. She's obsessed with Marvel. If you were a superhero, what would your superpower be?
As a kid, I wanted to be invisible. I know that's not a good power because that deals with my introversion. Like, I'm feeling super awkward. You can't see me. That would be it. That would be my answer as a kid. I don't know what my superpower would be right now. But I feel like my real life superpower is my mouth. I want to be able to communicate and connect with people. And it's through this. It used to be my hands, right? Sometimes my wife would grab me and she'd kiss me like really like aggressively. I'm like, hold on, babe. Don't damage the goods. I need to ensure this from Christie's. Like, easy there. And she looks at me, please.
Hilarious. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Chris. We really appreciate having you on. We appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on Not Nice, Clever.
Remember to follow Not Nice, Clever wherever you listen to audio.
And if you haven't already, drop that 5-star review.
Share your takeaways. Tell us your story. We love to hear it.
Signing off, you're not so nice, but oh so clever besties that mean business.
See you soon.